NACS is a growing organization, and we've had a couple new hires lately. And in some of these hiring interviews, we've tended to ask some of the same questions. And one of my favorite ones is, why don't you talk about what your first 90 days will look like? Today, we're going to talk to a new NACS employee about his first 90 days. He also happens to be NACS President and CEO. So joining us today is Frank Gleeson. And Frank, we've talked a lot. We've had you on the podcast in the past in different roles. We had your NACS show general session, that panel that you did with Brian Honish and Henry Armour. So a friend of the show, welcome back as NACS President and CEO.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. It feels like I've been waiting for this job all my life. So after the first 90 days, it could not be any better.
So let's talk about what your first 90 days are like. We have CEOs that listen. We have aspiring CEOs that listen. Once there was that transition underway, you and Henry had a lot of meetings, a lot of good, tight communications. Talk a little bit about that process and talk about what your philosophy was in starting at a new organization where somebody's been at the helm for 20 years.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Jeff. And when I think about NACS today, I think it's an incredible organization. It's truly valued by its members, truly valued by its supplier partners, and everybody involved globally, as a high quality, effective organization that's been built over many years. And the last architect of that was Henry Armour, who I've had the pleasure of observing in progress. So I've been around NACS, as you know, for quite a while. So watching the master at play has been great. It's been great learning for me, but it's like anything. It's time for change, and change is now. And I'm thrilled to be the new CEO and president. Henry did a terrific handover with me. I've been close to the organization probably since September, where I've been coming over once a week. And then as the transition or the baton handed over in January 1, I'm well set up, and there's been a really, really smooth transition from Henry to myself.
Now, one of the things that we've seen as staff is you're meeting with a lot of people. You're meeting with our key members. You're meeting with everybody on staff. And, first off, talk about the importance of that. I think there's always a tendency when you come into a new job, I got so many things to do. I have to do this. I have to do this. I don't have time for that. So talk a little bit about your prioritization that you've had over these first 3 months, this first quarter, in what you wanted to do and how you wanted to do it.
Yeah, another great question, Jeff. I mean, for me, having observed some awesome CEOs over the years, right, what everyone has taught me is go out and listen, observe, and experience, right, how the organization is perceived and how it operates. So that's what I'm doing, right? So I've been meeting all the staff. We've had a lot of communication sessions, and more importantly, I've been out in the field. We've had our leadership down in Miami, which is a great event, well attended, and really highly rated event, met a lot of the senior leaders. I've also been out doing the industry update meetings. So I've been in Florida. We did 2 of those. We've been in California. We've been up to Boston. We've been really on the road quite a bit to make sure that I can get as much information and feedback. And I do love feedback, Jeff, because, with somebody new coming in, people will tell you the truth. They'll tell you how you're doing, and they'll tell you what the opportunities are. And that's really where my focus is. The organization is a great organization. So we're going to go through an evolutionary change, building on the success of the past. The last 60 years, last 3 CEOs, as we head towards 100-year anniversary of convenience, right? We are in a great spot, and I'm highly excited about the opportunities ahead of us. But more importantly, I'm very respectful, and I want to listen to the members and make sure that everyone's voice is heard, and then we can create and evolve this organization into an even better association that supports our industry in every way they would want it.
You touched upon something that I was going to ask anyway. You talked about the industry, and one of the unique things about being a leader of an association is you are leading the association itself, but you're also leading the industry. So is there a different dynamic in telling both stories to an audience? Let's just say suppliers, when you're out on the road meeting with suppliers, You're talking about NACS. You're talking about the industry. Any tips for anybody else that's doing the same on how to best communicate both things in a way that makes sense to somebody, because there's two different hats you're wearing?
Yeah, no, true, but it doesn't mean the message has to change dramatically, Jeff. I mean, for me, you've got to be authentic. You've got to actually stay true to the values that you believe in. You've got to make sure that, number one, you're listening, but you're also communicating, right? So part of what you've seen is I'm asking a lot of questions, but then I'm also opening a lot of opportunities. So I'll say, what could we do better? How can we change things? How can we improve things? Because I think change is required. I mean, just look at the last 5 years, Jeff. Phenomenal change, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of some of the things that have come at us. We're going to see tremendous change in the industry the next 5 and 10 years. And we need to be willing and able to adapt. We need to be nimble and agile in our thinking and in our execution, because that's what we need from our organization. And I have to say, having been involved in associations for more than 20 years, both in the US and globally and locally in Europe, I've learned from some of the best, right? How to drive member satisfaction, how to make sure that you're relevant, and then how to make sure that your voice is heard by people who are making decisions that affect your industry and your members. So that they're the important things that, having worked for a long number of years across many different industries, more recently in food service, but right across fuel, convenience, hospitality, and retail more generally, using that experience to make sure our members are best served and our organization gets stronger, not just in the US, Jeff, but globally.
Yeah, when you talk about, you had mentioned food service, and at Aramark, it totally made sense. You were the equivalent of 1 million meals a day, overseeing that. And one of my favorite lines by you, that you said this before you started, I've heard it since you started as CEO, President and CEO. If you're not serving the customer directly, you're serving someone who is serving the customer. And then I think in parentheses, unsaid, and if you're doing neither, you better figure that one out. So
totally agree, Jeff. I mean, just think about it, right? We are in the hospitality service business, right? We serve 1 in 2 Americans every single day, right? And if that service is superior, you get more loyalty from your customers. And everybody knows, you'll hear somebody will amplify a bad service experience 100 times, a good one maybe 10. So you have to be brilliant at it. Now, I personally think that comes from the top. I think you have to have a service mindset if you're leading any organization that is in the retail or hospitality business. So you have to walk the talk. So you'll often see me, I'll pay attention to every service person I see, sometimes more than CEOs, because I think that's correct. I think it's right. And I always think about me, I'm actually an overhead, but I'm not somebody that generates revenue. So I need to be respectful of the people who do generate revenue in our business.
So there was a great article in the January NACS magazine. I'll touch upon some of the fun things in a little bit, but really terrific article. I learned some things, and I've known you for upwards of 20 years. But I want to talk about 3 business things, and then we'll talk about some fun things. But you talked about the 3 factors to win. And no surprise, it's 3 that you've talked about quite often. You talked about it at the NACS show. You talked about it the first week you were here with NACS staff. But one of them is food service, and what our industry needs to do to look at food service. One of your lines that you said in that issue, and you've said elsewhere, is you fuel your car once a week. You fuel your body 3 times a day, sometimes more. So the importance of fuel or food service to our industry and the evolving customer, I think it's really important now, and it's going to be even more important.
I completely agree. And that's something I repeat and repeat and repeat, Jeff, because it's true. You think about it, right? Everyone has need states, thirst and hunger multiple times a day, and that's changing to more multiple times a day with all the snacking and the changes with GLP-1s and all that, kind of demands that customers are changing. But, that represents a massive opportunity for our members, and all of the guys who are investing, the members who are investing in food service in a serious way are doing very well. globally. I mean, you just have to look at the numbers. I mean, some of the statistics are staggering. We're seeing all the growth come from the main food, convenience, and fuel retailers. They are growing much faster than everybody else profitably. And I think that is a lesson for everybody. If you're not in food service in some way, you should start. If you're in it in a meaningful way, you're probably doing very well. If you're in it in a serious way, you're absolutely doing well, and you're going to capture more market share from your trading area. I think watch out QSRs, watch out casual dining. We're coming for your dollars because our industry can take more share, I believe, because we are close to the customer. We are convenient. Actually, that's the word, Jeff. You and I have discussed this. We're the only industry that can be described as a word. Convenience. We are convenient.
Yeah. And also, you talking about QSRs, they know that we're coming for their business, and they're focusing in some cases the right thing, in some cases the wrong thing. They're looking at our day parts, early morning, late. That's smart. But what they're also doing is they're pushing more people towards the drive-through. 75% roughly go through the drive-through. They're taking out seats and that's a leftover from COVID. When you see our industry adding seats. So to a certain extent, it seems that they are giving up the customer experience and focusing only on, and I'm using air quotes, the product.
Yeah.
And there's much more to food than just the product.
There's a few things I'll unpack there. I think this is really important, right? If you think about the QSR business or casual dining or restaurants, they have overpriced themselves due to the inflationary in labor and product. So they've had to drive more price than most. And I think Americans and citizens globally are actually voting with their frequency. So trips are down and they're all under pressure. You saw McDonald's introduce very recently their value menu back in. So I think there's going to be a bit of a QSR war, which could cause a lot of attrition. You're seeing Wendy's and others announce a lot of store closures, right? So big threat there for them because of their pricing and their value prop. We don't have that same problem. I think, our most progressive food service members are actually have figured out that they're in the foodvenience business, Jeff. They provide food and other products. Love the Casey's one where we're the beer headquarters where you can get pizza and ice cream. That to me is multiple trip opportunity. Very clever. I mean, Tom and the team up there are just awesome, Darren. It's no surprise that their results are good all of the time. So I think great opportunity for our members. I would caution, against complacency and service. You've got to deliver the experiential retail. Just look at what happened with Starbucks, lost their way significantly. A lot of pre-order, long queues, people coming in. Their casual sit-down business lost because they took out seats. They took away. I mean, they made a ton of mistakes that they're trying to correct now under Brian Nichol. And I wish him the best. He's had one quarter of like-for-like growth, but he's a long way to go. I think our industry is in a better spot, right? I really do, because we're in the customer service business, right? And we have multiple products across multiple day parts, and we can add more products. Like we're well known for actually pivoting and putting in adjacencies. So I think we're in a better spot. I think we should be able to win out, but only if we're serious, right? If you're not serious about food, I think there's risk.
Mm-hmm. So one more thing about Starbucks. They've gone through all these hurdles, mistakes, and none of them really had to do with changing anything related to their food or beverages. It was all customer experience, and it goes beyond the food. There's a relationship with a customer, and they misread it.
They did. I mean, listen, they might have thought it was a good idea at the time, right? So it's like anything. Right. I think just be careful. It is good to try things, new things, and be innovative. And I think technology, we'll talk about that in a few minutes, around use of technology to reduce friction and improve the customer experience. Definitely a good idea. But don't lose something that you're famous for, right? So if you're famous for the third place, which they were, they're now not famous for that anymore. So that's not a good thing. If your coffee is expensive and people have to wait in line for it, and it's not that good in terms of the service element to it, Is it worth $6 anymore? Definitely not. Definitely not. So I would say, I think our members are doing a better job in that space. I was in a Wawa recently where they've an outstanding cold beverage program, right? It is as good as you'll see anywhere. They've got the execution piece nailed, in my view, and they are winning market share. That's not a surprise. Same with the guys in Sheets. They are really clever around how they deliver customization. So there are pockets of excellence. Was with Scott Seatlow this last week, actually, regarding what they're doing, and I was fascinated about how they run their business. I mean, he's decided to be famous for products like bananas, fresh product, bakery, awesome stuff. So we have, in my mind, some of the most innovative retailers in the world in the US, and I could name another 20, 30, 50 for you, all of whom are doing well, and all of whom, in my mind, probably should survive beyond Starbucks, who really only have one product and one service experience that they've lost.
So I mentioned there were three things: food service, advocacy, technology. You mentioned technology, so let's go to that right now. There's been so much talk about AI and what AI can do. And certainly there's a lot that technology can do to enhance the business. But you've also talked about, so there are ways, we'll start with that. What is your philosophy on technology and supporting the business? And then what are guardrails?
Yeah, listen, I've always been interested in technology about how it would improve the customer experience, right? So let's talk about a couple of things that I see. So using technology to reduce back of house complexity, improve in-stock, improve anything that would take work away from management or staff is a great idea. Love it, because that's going to take large cost out, but more importantly, it gives us in-stock availability that our customers come to us for. Like they run out of something, they come into our stores, they expect us to have it. So that tech is actually working, and it's being deployed at scale across our industry. The other tech I think that's really important is, something like TruAge, where we've come up with a digital age verification product that's suitable for today, current driver's license. You can scan quickly and get in and get out without giving your private information away. So that to me is super clever. It's also digital proof for the future, as in it can be used on your phone. And the big thing about it is it actually helps our members be faster and more efficient and safer with transactions. And it doesn't cause concern for customers because we're not taking their data, right? They can keep their privacy, and privacy is super important. So I would say the use of technology in our stores has never been more important to create a good experience or a frictionless experience, or to help us make sure that we run our businesses more efficiently. So big fan of tech, and I think you're going to see continued deployment of tech. Now, it will not be just walkout stores like you saw with Amazon Go, because that didn't work. And I predicted that many years ago when it came out first. I said, that's not scalable. It's not a solution that people want, because it's a soulless experience. Nobody says hello to you. There's no one there. It's horrible. Now, yeah, some people might like that, of course, but not enough to make it viable. So I think the deployment of technology with checkout or ordering or delivery, there are uses, but you need to be careful that it doesn't destroy something that's core to you, which is service.
Yeah, and exactly with the first time I went to Amazon, at first it was amazing. Oh, look, it's doing this. But it was all about the experience. There was no reason to go back. It was one and done. It was, oh, I've done that. Now I can talk about it. It wasn't that much faster, but going to TruAge, it was an interesting personal experience this past weekend. My wife and I went out with our 22-year-old daughter, and we went to a restaurant, and she wanted to get a drink. Now, she didn't have her driver's license on her. And it's like, well, she looks like she could be of age. And so I just told her, I said, well, if you had TruAge on your phone,
yeah,
then you don't need to, all you have to do is carry your phone. So it was kind of nice to have that intersection to be a salesperson and tell her to get TruAge. So hopefully.
I agree. It's the greatest story that hasn't been told, where, NACS in its wisdom have developed a world-class product. And I actually think it's world-class. And I would know because I've been around the world a bit, Jeff, right? I can tell you.
Right.
Kudos to the team. We have a great product that we're scaling out. I think what it does is it ensures our members can act responsibly at a time when There's going to be tremendous change in age verification products and ranges of products and in-store experience products. And if we have something in our arsenal that makes us the best place to go because we can do it better than anybody else without hurting people's privacy, we can win more. And I think I would urge all your listeners to go talk to the team. It's free, by the way, right? So NACS is providing it to its members because that's what we do. We try and make our industry better.
I'll have to have my kid on and have her hold up her true age when she gets it, if she gets it, but I'm going to make her get it. So we talked about food service, we talked about technology, and those are two things every business looks at to see how do they play in that area. The third area that you talked about in Factors to Win is advocacy, and that's where everyone plays, regardless of your size, regardless of your region, regardless of your business philosophy. And you've talked about the power of advocacy. You've talked about it when we started this episode. You've had experience in Ireland. You've had experience here in the power of your voice in making a difference. Talk a little bit about why it's so important for somebody who's never been involved before to get involved.
Yeah, I mean, it's really straightforward, Jeff. Your voice matters. Right. And it matters because, number one, if it's not heard, well, then politicians or legislators will not know what you want or what you need to create a business environment, to create jobs and prosperous businesses. So now more than ever, because of all of the turbulence, political turbulence, economic turbulence, we need to make sure our industry voice is fully heard, and particularly on the big issues. And, the big issue at the moment is credit card swipe fees, right? We've been battling that for 20 years. We just got the White House and President Trump to endorse it in Q1. So we're at a pivotal point in this fight to make it fair. And I've used this. I was actually on Capitol Hill last week. I had 9 meetings with different congressmen and their staff, with Scott and Tom and a few of the retailers. And we were pressing home the unfairness of what American retailers have to pay on credit card swipe fees versus their counterparts in Europe, because I can testify to this factually. We pay 2.3% credit card fees here. In Europe, it's 0.3%. And that's a difference with the same providers, MasterCard, Visa, and it's completely unfair, So we have to win the battle this year. We need the members to come out and support it. We will be calling on them numerous times during the year. They've just come back. We had nearly 200 on the Hill last week. It was very vibrant, Jeff, last Wednesday. First time that I heard the staff say there was more interest from the people we met. They got it, they understand, and maybe the environment is just right with Americans hurting in their pockets. We're definitely seeing inflationary pressures, and we know that the retailers aren't the ones making the money. It's the banks that are ripping us off. So this is the year for that. There's also other issues, and the other big issue we were talking on the Hill about last week was illicit. Massive problem for our industry. Vapes and other tobacco products been sold without regulation, without controls, largely, that are taking from responsible retailers that we represent. So we carry that message very strongly, and we will continue to advocate that message very strongly because, number one, we want to do the right thing for society, provide options legally, safely, using products like True Age. But unless we're up there talking about it and making sure that the legislators understand it, and by the way, more than likely they don't. So you have to spend the time, you have to talk to your local senators, congressmen in your local states, and then you got to support the federal push or the Hill issues that we bring, because it's the only way to be effective. And I can tell you from past experience, Jeff, working in Ireland and in Europe, we became highly effective because we became trusted and we became an important source of information when the government wanted to make changes that were needed societally or for other reasons. So I think that voice is super important. And by the way, the GR team do a great job. I've been very impressed with them.
Yeah, and there was huge energy coming off of those Hill meetings. And I know the week or two earlier, the credit card industry was there. And I think that in some offices, there were some mistruths, we'll say it that way, that were corrected.
I might have called it lies, Jeff, to be honest, right? So just to be clear.
Yes, that's a little more succinct. But yeah, because if you hear one thing and you don't hear the other side, you're going to believe the side that you heard until you find otherwise. But exactly what you were saying, when you're credible, when you're trusted, when people know that your information is good and you keep on saying it, that's going to be what they're going to believe.
I mean, the important message we gave them last week is we represent every single town, village, city, state with our membership, right? We serve 1 in 2 Americans every single day. We employ millions of Americans. We provide and collect a massive amount of taxes. And by the way, we make very modest profits. And most of those profits get reinvested in the local community, local businesses. So we have a voice that must be heard, Jeff. It's a very important voice, and it's one that I will continue to amplify with the team, and we will continue to drive home what's good for our industry and what's good for American citizens.
Well, I'm going to end on that note. I was going to talk a little bit about Gaelic football. We're going to save that for the next conversation, because we talked in the January NACS magazine article, talked about how you said you weren't the most talented person. You weren't necessarily the best player on your team, but you excelled at a certain level because a little bit of competitiveness in you. We'll save that for the next podcast. But what I would like to emphasize is Frank will be on the road a lot. He is in staff offices a lot. He is soaking up things, great energy. If you haven't registered yet, you will next see him most likely, if not sooner, at the NACS State of the Industry Summit, which is in the suburbs of Chicago in Schaumburg on April 13th through 15th. You'll be on stage there. The last 3 weeks, we've had people who are speaking at the NACS SOI Summit. And that's where you see the new numbers. And it's a great way to learn how to get better. It's also a great way to learn about our numbers so you can advocate on our behalf. So hope to see you in Schaumburg in a couple weeks. And Frank, I'm going to see you a lot because you're coming around our offices a lot and you're asking some great questions. So thanks for joining us and giving us this 90-day overview. We hope to be talking to you much more on this podcast on a regular basis. But thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Jeff. Much appreciated. And again, hope to see everybody at SOI. I always say, if you know your numbers, you have a chance of actually beating your numbers. So find out what's going on and measure your performance against what the best in the industry are doing. Great way of actually managing the business.
And thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.